brand. Turquoise has one commercial application, and that's for use in jewelry. And it is most famous for being used in fine Native American jewelry from the Southwest. Now, on our many blogs and videos on our blogs, and we're up to over 165 videos and articles on the blog, we have featured several on Native American jewelry. But I noticed we've never had one that was focused on fine turquoise in rings. And of course, for many people, that's one of their favorite uses of the turquoise, is to put it into a beautiful ring. So I thought that's what we do, is take a look at some really beautiful rings by some master jewelers, very high grade turquoise. And maybe somebody will get an idea about some turquoise you may have that you want to have set in a ring, or some turquoise that you're going to find from the Calais collection, and you may get some ideas about what you might do with that beautiful turquoise. So with that, let's take a look at some turquoise in rings. So here we see a selection of beautiful, very high grade to gem grade turquoise in a number of rings. You know, I always say how important provenance is for the identity of turquoise. And that's true as well for jewelry, for the turquoise in the fine Native American jewelry, because each one of these rings all has a story. And you know, the story is a lot of the fun. You see the beautiful ring, the beautiful jewelry, beautiful turquoise, but it's always such a pleasure to know the story. For example, over here, we see this ring, and it's by Mary Marie Yazzie, and she's the sister of Raymond Yazzie and Lee Yazzie. And as we can see, she's a master jeweler on her own. She's very well known for creating these wonderful silver beads. Should always be on the lookout for those if you happen to come across them. This is some beautiful, very high grade Nevada blue turquoise. As we move across over here, we see another piece of Nevada blue, and this is by Julian Lovato, one of the most famous of all Native American jewelers, who was from Kiowa Pueblo, also known as Santo Domingo. And along with Charles Loloman and all the great master jewelers, they all work with just the finest turquoise. And Julian was known in the 70s and 80s for just working with this fine, fine turquoise. And here we see again Nevada blue. If we go up here, we now go to Tony Abeda. Tony Abeda is most well known as a painter, and he's one of our finest, I would say Native American painters, but I'll just say finest American painters. And he's also a master jeweler. And here we see this beautiful piece of turquoise that I really believe is royal blue from the Royston district. That's a very famous old turquoise mine. You read about that in Turquoise in America Part 2, 1910 to 1990. You know, another thing when we learn the story, when you see the turquoise, you know the turquoise. Isn't it always a pleasure to know the history of the turquoise? I think it just makes all the jewelry, all the turquoise that much more meaningful. If we go across here, this is an interesting story. You know, before I moved to Santa Fe, I lived in a suburb outside of Chicago. And I was snooping around in an Indian arts store. And I saw this ring. And of course, I just, you know, you see a ring like this and you're like, oh, Lander Blue, Lander Blue. And so I looked and I could see on the uh, the mark on the back that this was the hallmark, that this was by Wes Willie. So I knew Wes, so I gave him a call. He's a wonderful man, very accessible. And, you know, it's just amazing. You'd think an old ring like this, because the story was the dealer had gotten it on consignment from a family whose mother had gotten this ring years ago. She'd had it many years, passed away, and now they had it in the store on consignment. So I contacted Wes, and he remembered the ring, and it was sold at the Herd Show in would have been early 90s or so. And it was Chinese turquoise, which really fits because this would have been the time, as we know from reading in chapter 5, First Contact, in part 2, we know that at that time, fine gem grade dark web turquoise from China had come into the marketplace. And this had not been available for many years. So this is, again, a wonderful way to find the provenance on the stone. If you can contact the jeweler, they'll likely remember that ring or that piece of jewelry, be able to identify it for you. We go down here, we're going to go back to the Yazzie family, and this is Lee Yazzie. Now Lee really hasn't, he works very slowly, doesn't do a lot of work. And as we've said before, Lee was really closely associated with Gene Waddell. And Gene was really his primary dealer, and most of the work that Lee would provide would go to Gene. And that's what happened with this ring. Gene sold this ring 25 years ago. And it went to a lady, and she reached a point where, you know, you hate to have your beautiful jewelry when it goes to your children. You don't want to see it end up in a garage sale being sold at 10 cents on the dollar. So she was divesting herself of this, and she had given this to Bill Faust, who has a gallery here in Santa Fe. And that's how I came across this. What a wonderful piece of jewelry. Now, Lee is most known for using beautiful Lone Mountain turquoise. And when I first saw this turquoise in there, I thought, wow, that looks like it might be Lone Mountain. But once again, you go back to the dealer, and Gene said, no, this is Chinese, high-grade Chinese. And you know, who really cares? It's really the beauty of the stone. The Z is there wherever it came from. If we go up here, you're getting into Bisbee country now. And Bruce Mead taught me, he was a Bisbee rock man. He taught me how to cut turquoise. He also provided a lot of the Bisbee turquoise in the Calais collection. And he was also a wonderful jeweler. And he made a whole series of rings. He only worked with the finest Bisbee turquoise, oftentimes setting it with diamonds, but using 20 karat gold. And we see this here in this ring. We go across here, some more Bisbee. This is a piece that I bought from Bruce, some of the highest grade of Bisbee you'll ever see. And so I had this stone, and I went to Gene Waddell, and I said, well, who would you recommend to make a ring? And he suggested to me, he said, Don Suplee is doing some of the finest work that I'm seeing right now. And Don had been out of the trade for a while. He was a cook. He was a chef. And by all accounts, a very fine chef. But he came back to the Southwest and took up his jewelry again. And his brother, very well-known, Charles Suplee. And really right now, I think Don is probably putting out some of the highest work of any of the master jewelers. So if we go down here, we're going to see a couple of stones, a couple of rings here going back to the Yazzie family. And these are from Raymond. Now, Raymond works very slow, and he's known for doing these masterpiece rings and masterpiece bracelets, but they're really so much labor, so much time in them. They're really priced out of the range. They're these high five-figure amounts, and they're very, very expensive. But he has done these smaller pieces and these rings, at the same standard with his fine inlay work. And again, in this instance, I would say this is most probably a Lone Mountain turquoise. So we get an idea here of how you can have such beautiful representations of the turquoise in the jewelry and how wonderful it can be in a fine, handmade Native American ring.